Good evening, everyone. Before we get started in the class, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good evening, beautiful people. So today we are on class 7 of covering the Amitabha Sutra. And today I am giving the opportunity to my protege to give today's teaching on the next section of the Amitabha Sutra that we will cover. To him, he will introduce the section that he will be covering today and hopefully give you some sort of aha moment. Feel free to ask him any questions afterward and he will try to answer you to the best of his ability. If not, I will jump in. But I will go ahead and pass along the teaching responsibility tonight to Quang.
Thank you everyone for being here. Last time we had talked about the 6 requirements. I'll recite the sutra and then I'll go over what the 6 requirements were as a refresher. Grove in the garden of the benefactor of orphans and the solitary, together with a gathering of great bhikshus, 1,250 in all, and all great harhats, whom the assembly knew and recognized. Elder Shariputra, Magdalena, Mahakashyapa, and then it goes on to list the other 12 arhats. But today we'll really only go over the first paragraph, then I'll go over requirements of when a sutra starts are faith, hearing, time, the audience, the host, and then the place. So in this, what encapsulates the requirement of faith is the word thus. The next requirement is hearing, and that is said of heard. This can be interpreted as the whole being was present. So not only was this hearer listening, they were seeing this, they were experiencing this whole gathering. The next requirement is time, which is at one time, to say that at this time this did happen. This is the requirement to state that someone or group was present. This is taken to be that the group wanted to be there. These weren't just strangers. These were people wanting to hear the Dharma. They wanted the Buddha in this case to where, in some sutras, it's not the Buddha that's the host giving the Dharma. It can be one of his disciples or someone that he designates to give the Dharma. And then the last requirement is the place. And this place is Shavasti in the garden was spoken. So then that's the one requirement I will go over today is the place. So I've highlighted every part that I will go over. So Shavasti is what I will go into now. It is a city in what is now northern India. And the whole story goes back to a man named Anathapindada, whose name means benefactor of orphans and the solitary. And he was strolling around the across another wealthy man decorating his house, and he came up to the man and he said, well, what are you decorating your house for? Is your son getting married as well? He said, no, I have a guest arriving. I have the Buddha. I'm here to give him some offerings. And Anathapindada was kind of taken aback by this word, the Buddha. He had never heard of the person before. And just hearing this word, the Buddha, stirred something in the man. Where he spent all day thinking about this word, the Buddha, to where when he went to sleep at night, he was awoken by this great light outside. It was this sort of a second sun in the evening. And when he left his room and looked outside at what this great light, it was the Buddha coming into Sravasti. And he opened up the gate, and he didn't know who this man was 3 times. And seeing that this being was respected by God, he goes, oh, this man must be, he must mean a lot to these people. So he came up to him and he said, you must be a great person. Let me get a great place for you to stay in. And the Buddha said, thank you. So Anathapindata went out about and looking for any place that would any place until he came across Prince Jeta and his own garden. And he went up to him, and because Anathapindata was wealthy, he said, can I purchase this land from you? He said, yeah, you can purchase this land from me if you pay the gold to cover the entire garden in gold coins. He said, I have enough. No, I was just joking. I wasn't going to give up this garden to you anyways. What's mine is mine. I'm not giving it to anyone else. And Anathapindata he saw that this was kind of a nasty thing the prince had done to where he reprimanded him. He said, you know, if you're going to be a king one day, you should probably keep your word when you say you're going to sell something to someone. And he said, you know, you're right, yeah. But since you only cover the ground, you can't have the trees. So I can have the trees and you can have the ground. Thus it's called the Jeta Grove and the Garden of the Benefactor of Orphans and the Solid. He still owns the trees. So that's the story of that. And then to go into, I guess, what the purpose of the land was after that. Because the benefactor of orphans purchased this land, he was using it to home people that were in need. So like his name does say, he was there to aid orphans, but also in that widowers, widows, and the solitary, or people without. So that's what the Garden of the Benefactor of Orphans and the Solitary is. And then now going on to the next sentence, which is together with a gathering of great bhikshus, 1200. The commentary goes into great detail to where even singular words mean a lot. The word together, this is supposed to denote this was a tight-knit community getting together. By that, they ate together, they slept in rooms together, they learned the Dharma together, and they were ultimately together for the same purpose, to realize Buddhahood together. And within this community, that they were to, they do not gossip. They only speak in terms of non-harm, and they don't really only speak about what's important. So nothing about idle chatter, nothing. Somebody discouraged by their practice, what these thoughts are supposed to do is to encourage that person to go, you know, today wasn't really the best, but harmony is to abide by their precepts. So in monastic sanghas, there's 250 precepts for monks and then about 350 for nuns, but then the 5 the lay people abide by: sexual misconduct, do not steal, and do not take intoxicants. And the 5 harmony is harmonious views of non-harm towards one another, and just trying to be as beneficial to. If one member of the Sangha is given a load of food, he's not just going to keep it for themselves. They're going to a lot of sharing that goes along. Great bhikshus. Great in the context has 3 meanings. It means great in a different sense. It means many, and it means victorious. So it does mean great in the respect that the people within this gathering are respected by great men. It means kings or people of high stature. Great also means many in the context of they cut off many, in the context of they cut off many afflictions and they destroy visions. So they're not bound by ignorance, they're able to see things for as they are. So then with great goes with great bhikshus. Bhikshu itself has 3 meanings as well. The first meaning is, bhikshu means seeker of alms, is one that frightens Mara, to where you think back what Mara represents. Mara is sort of any affliction that you have. So it's Mara is sort of any affliction that you have. So it's attachment, it's lust, it's greed, it's anger, it's ignorance. Mara is all these sort of. But then in another case, when someone is ordained to become a bhikshu, sometimes there's a yaksha present, so a spirit, and then the spirit goes and tells a space travel present, so a spirit, and then the spirit goes and tells a space traveling spirit, and then this other spirit goes into the heavenly realms and talks to a surrogate one. We lost one to our power. The Buddha's gained one for his numbers. His whole palace trembles. So a bhikshu is someone that frightens Mara because they don't. Mara does not have control over them anymore. And then the third meaning of bhikshu is one that is not subject to afflictions any longer. Their mind is not. This is just for convenience. It's easier to say 1250 than it is 1255. The extra 5 are the Buddha's first 5 disciples after his enlightenment. And then the 50 come from this group known as the Yasas, 49 disciples. The 200 comes from Shariputra and Maha Magdalena, because before they had found the Buddha, they were great debaters and philosophers of that time, and they had gathered these 200 people, 100 for Shariputra, 100 for Maha Magdalena, and they kind of just traveled around, going around, attending debates and talking with other philosophers. And then the 1,000 comes from the Kashyapa brothers, and there were 3 brothers, and between all 3 of them, they had 100 or 1,000 followers, and they were all Venerable Kashyapa, who studied in what he had, the papaya grove, and as a fun fact, he had, besides the point. The other 2 brothers are named Gaya, which means city, and the other last brother's name is Ur. And amongst them, they all had 1,000 followers. 5 disciples attained arhatship. He had this vision of the Kashyapa brothers going, oh, they seem to have high spiritual attainments. Maybe I should try to see if I can to get these brothers on it. I've been traveling for a long day. I need a place to rest. Do you mind if I stay with you? And Uravilva looked at the Buddha and said, I'll have you stay with me, but you can only stay in my cave. And in my cave, there's this dragon there because we're fire worshippers, and this is a fire-breathing dragon. And the Buddha, he sees 4, and some were burned alive, and then some others they were able to pacify the dragon to where, because this was a dragon, this was some magical being, so they would trick it and go, oh, you're this massive, fiery, fierce dragon. I bet you can't turn into this little, tiny thing. And the dragon goes, oh no, I can definitely. So they tricked it, made it small, and they were able to cage this dragon. He was trying to stay in the cave with the dragon in a non-harmful way. So what the Buddha had done is he started talking to the dragon about the Dharma, and the dragon found this he was able to pacify this dragon and speak to this man. So he said, your virtue is much greater. 2 brothers saw this as well and said, this is a great teacher. We're not really getting anywhere with our fire worship, so let us go follow the Buddha. So that's where the comes from. So in total, the 200 from Shariputra and Maha Magdalena, and the 1,000 from the Kashyapa brothers. Yes. Then the next part of this is the next great again because it pertains to the previous sentence. So the next word in there is arhat. And then arhat itself has 3 meanings, much like bhikshu had. So arhat means worthy of awful doubt, rites and rituals, sensual desire, ill will, craving to be born in material existence, craving for formless existence, restlessness. And the third meaning of arhat sounds violent, but the way that this is phrased as thieves of ignorance and afflictions. And because they're not bound by any of these afflictions or any of this ignorant thing, they don't have anything to attach to. They have no fear of life, they have no fear of death, and then belligerence, well known and respected by the communities that they had lived in. Well known and respected by the communities that they had lived in. So then, great arhats will go into dharma nature, and then elder and blessings and virtue. Elder in age makes sense, someone that's older or than other people, and they're able to comprehend their own self-nature. And by this, but this even works for younger people too, to where even though they may be young in years, they're more along the path than some older people. to be, because of this abundance of blessings and virtues, they're able to give these out to other people. They're able to spread their virtues out and plant seeds in people that they come along their path. So the first one, he was born with the name Upatisya, which means little Tisa, which was his father's name. And he would later be called Shariputra, which means son of Sari, which was his mother. And that name Shariputra, again, has three meanings as well. It means body son, because his mother had great beauty and very defined features. And it's said that Shariputra also had these very defined features, born with this golden complexion. It also means, and then the third meaning of his name is jewel son, because like his mother and himself, his eyes shone like jewels. He was, even before his conception, he was in previous great intelligent being, to where before his mother had conceived him, she would have debates with people, some townspeople, her brother, her father, and she would always lose these, doing all this stuff. And when he gets born, I want to debate this. When his nephew was born, he could go debate him. But we'll get along to where he meets his uncle later. We'll go into, I guess, when Shan, three sisters, and then all seven of them would eventually take refuge in the Buddha and then become arhats. And then growing up, he spent most of his time with his friend Kali, which will soon become Mahagalyana. They had this profound desire for wisdom, winning all these debates and just talking with people about all this philosophy. But then eventually, one day, the two of them had went to a festival and had the profound realization of impermanence, and the truth of impermanence. And with this, they were just taken back, much like how the spiritual need to get things done. So they set out for answers, much like how the Buddha had done for ascetic teachers, and much like how the Buddha was, where he surpassed his teachers, Shariputra and Mahagalyana, and try to figure these things out for ourselves. So the two friends departed, but before they departed, they said, as soon as one of us figures out the way out of all this, to end the cycle of rebirth and find nirvana, we need to get back with each other. So then after Shariputra had left his last teacher, he was walking and he saw this serene Asvajita. He was one of the first arhat. Serene, you're very peaceful. I would like a teaching from you. The monk had told him, I'm only newly an arhat. I don't know too much about the teaching just yet, but I can cause arise. Tathagata, the cause therefore has told. And how to say, of all these things that come from a cause arise, Tathagata, the cause therefore has told. And how they cease to be, that all depends on its causations. To where you may have heard before, you can sum this all up as everything that arises ceases, Sarvatana, to where since he saw this, he finally reached this enlightened state. He went to go talk with his friend, and he said the same verse to him, and upon hearing that, he's like, this is it. He also became the Sarvatana as well, achieving the first state of enlightenment. We need to take refuge in this teacher. We think we finally found the way. So they had become ordained under the Buddha. Another story about how the Buddha had got another disciple, but Shariputra's uncle had came back and going, okay, I'm finally ready to debate. And so he goes to his sister and he says, all right, where's your son? And he goes, well, he kind of left home a few, you cannot have him. He said, well, I'm not accepting your words. I'm taking him, because accept anything. How do you accept your own views? And this sort of hit his uncle really hard. He goes, I guess that makes sense. This is indeed a wise man that I'm dealing with here. So upon that, he said, I would like a Shariputra, so he just took refuge in the Buddha. So then now, with all of them now as disciples, Mahagalyana, Shariputra are the first two chieftains. They weren't for at least 2 weeks, because after 2 weeks, Shariputra had already become an arhat, where these other monks had spent most of their time, my first chief disciple, because I have known him for previous lifetimes ago. And so he has always been my student. I have always been his teacher. And in the past lifetime, I had asked him, do you wish to become intelligent? Shariputra had told the Buddha in a past lifetime, yes, I would like to be intelligent. He said, intellect. Till finally, when he had met the Buddha, when the Buddha was in the world, when he was born, he was able to keep, or the Buddha was able to keep that promise that you will become my chief disciple. So this eased a lot of jealousy that the monks. He was the one to give talks for the Buddha when the other wasn't feeling well, or he would assign Shariputra, and most of the times assign objects of meditation. He was also one of the first people to ordain monks as well. He was also had the duties of taking care of sick monks and then going out into the world and helping out lay people when they needed the help. Shariputra was also accredited with the establishment of the monastic code. The monastic code is the Sila Pitaka. It was very seriously as well, the monastic code, almost to the point of stubbornness, to where it was an account of Shariputra known as one of the repugnant herbs, and it's one of the things that monks and nuns don't eat. So and then with that, he was also though he was stubborn in some sense, he was also very great in wisdom and meditation. Samadhi, he was very hard to take him out at all. To where people would go out for alms realms and they would signal Shariputra going, okay, we're ready to go out for the alms realms, and Shariputra would be sitting there meditating. The monks, he's just being a jerk. He's not paying attention to us. But then when he would come out of meditation, go, oh yeah, I actually didn't hear anything. That's how great his meditation was, or his concentration. Didn't even budge. He was just sitting there in his samadhi. And as he came out of the meditation, the other monks go, did you see what happened to you? You had a ghost come up and very gifted in meditation, but it was due to his practice. Up until the end of his life, his all died before the Buddha. And having realized this and noticed that his time was short, he had to get some last things done before he would enter parinirvana. So he had left. She herself had never heard the Dharma. So that was the last thing that he would do. Said that Shariputra had voluntarily achieved parinirvana because he couldn't stand to witness the death of the Buddha. So instead of given to the Buddha, and during his funeral, the Buddha had praised Shariputra. So this is the story of Shariputra. Next time we will go over. That's all I have planned for today. But if anyone has any questions about
please quiz him.
Brought in to be disciples, but I have 4 chief disciples. He had 2 male and he had 2 female. So I don't know the exact times, and I believe the female counterpart to Shariputra, there are female arhats as well. Well, if we have no questions.
Lightning Dharma talk on the Garden of the Benefactor of Orphans in the Solitary and the Arhat Shariputra. Shariputra is first and foremost main disciple, one of the main disciples of the Buddha. Shariputra and Mahamodgalayana are the 2 main ones. So usually when we go to like a Theravada temple, for instance, the Buddha and then Shariputra Mahamodgalayana right next to him, standing, right as his attendants. or visit a temple, and Ananda and talk, the answer is yes. The Amitabha Sutra was given toward the end of the Buddha's life. They're just not mentioned in most sutras. It follows the same pattern as thus I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying in whatever city at the time, along with the assembly of the other fun fact I wanted to bring up about Shepard's uncle, and I don't have it written down, to retrieve his nephew. He was like, I'm here for my nephew. And as Quang had mentioned, the Buddha was like, no, that's not how this works. And his uncle had spent some 20 plus years studying all over India and study and learn all I can to be the best debater ever. Whatever his name is, I forgot his name. Said, I will debate you, and if I lose, or sorry, if I win, the uncle, stupidly, right, he made that bet, and stupidly he lost, naturally. And so he stops, he's like, you know what, no, I made a bet, so I'm going to go back and honor my bet. So he goes back to the Buddha, and he asks the Buddha for a knife. And the Buddha's like, why do you want a knife for? He's like, well, I lost the bet. I owe you my head. And the Buddha was telling him, that's not part of my dharma, that's not part of my teachings. I don't believe in violence, I don't believe in killing yourself. And so the Buddha was like, that Quang Hing's using, or if I heard it or read it somewhere else, but that stuck with me all these years because I just thought it was so funny. So to that people seem, because essentially, like, think of debates today, right? All debates have a topic, all debates have a genre, right? Like, both parties know what you're debating about. But then the uncle goes in trying to debate something he has no idea about, right? The Dharma, the Buddhist Dharma, the Buddha Dharma. He has no idea of the Buddha Dharma. So he's so arrogant, and that's why he lost. Had he known the Buddha Dharma prior to that, he may have come to the realization like, this of, what was it? What is it? No expectation. What was he? Fondant? Whatever. Point is his don't your arrogance of a specific topic render you this big head is pretty much it. The first whole section of the sutra is pretty much all storytelling, right? Because the remaining of this whole paragraph, naming all the arhats, which I should have brought the books out. Gayan Mahakafina Vakula Aniruddha. Aniruddha is the last one. Those are the 16 arhats. So all these 16 arhats all have stories. And so for the next few classes, we'll just be listening to stories. And though it's not necessarily in direct relation to the sutra, as I mentioned many classes ago, the reason why we're discussing details of the types of sutras, the details of all the 6 requirements, because it's important to know backstories of things, right? As a practitioner, if you consider yourself a practitioner or a meditator, line of work and whatnot. So it's important to have some background knowledge, because as you go through and deepen your practice, and so instead of trying to relearn it or trying to learn those little tidbit information on top of the bigger teaching, right, you'll save yourself a lot of time by something known by news. But bhikshu, for the most part, just means monk, right? Bhikshuni means nun. And so it's like, and arhat, we don't use arhat often. I think I use it commonly, maybe, I don't know. But arhat is another word we don't use or hear often. Arhat just literally means sutras or really this untranslatable, but sometimes we have to put an English, like shunyata, for instance. This is the closest English word that we can use to translate the word shunyata. And there are many other terminologies, right? Even the word for suffering, dukkha, and the opposite of that is asukha, right? Which is the opposite of suffering or dissatisfaction, which means happiness or freedom. To be better prepared for our own progress, for our own studying, and be prepared. Whether it's just you're having a casual conversation with a friend or a family member, right? You're talking about Buddhism, you're talking about the Dharma, you're talking about the practice. If you know more, right, then it'll come across when you're speaking to another that it's sometimes the lack of confidence is very noticeable, right? And in Buddhism, you really can't fake it, right? There's no faking it until you make it. It doesn't work vast. It's so comprehensive. To me, this is why we kind of go over this. The little details that we went over, all the little details that Quang just went over. Knowing the backstory just makes things easier for you in the future, right? Yeah, I'll stop there. But you get the point, right? I hope. Questions for me? Concerns, emotional outbursts about anything that was and maybe Mahakatyana. Probably 3. We'll probably do, I'm trying to remember if they get longer or shorter. Mahakafina and Vakula have like what? 2 sentences for as we get to the Bodhisattvas, probably we'll spend just 1 class on the Bodhisattvas are listed in this. We have 3 Bodhisattvas, where we have 2 Avalokiteshvaras, Mahasamaprapta, or Great Strength Bodhisattva, and Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva. But knowing some of these Bodhisattvas' backgrounds and their stories and their characteristics are also beneficial, because that way when you do read about them, or when you do see the imagery of them or see the statues of them, you know what they represent, right? For the same reason that we have the statues of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas here, right? They're not just here to be here, right? The Bodhisattva of great compassion, right? Compassion is a huge deal in Buddhism, right? As we know. And so as we look upon Avalokiteshvara, right, what it should be doing, right, if we're mindful enough, we should the image of Avalokiteshvara or read the name of or deep listening, right? These are the qualities that we want to try to attribute to ourselves as well, right? We want to develop great compassion. We want to be able to develop to people and to those that are suffering, right? These are qualities that I hope that we aspire to want to achieve, right? And so when we look upon the image or read the name or chant the name, we try to recollect those qualities and those attributes and try to develop them within. It's really impossible to be able to cultivate and concentrate and be mindful of your practice 24/7, right? But that will help you when you're in situations of difficulty. That will help you in situations where you may have fear or anxiety or impatience or whatever it may be, right? You can use the recollection of Buddha. Every single one of us has the qualities that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have. They're not just, the only difference is they're not as great, right? They're not perfected like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But the more we use them, the more we water those seeds within our mind, our consciousness, the more they start to develop, the more they start to grow, and they bear fruits, then you start to perfect them. And once they're perfected, that quality is perfected, and you're perfected. You no longer have to use any mental inner questions. If not, then I do have a confirmed date for our retreat that's coming up. That will be on Saturday, June 20th. Subtitle.
Working with attachments.
Dealing with attachments?
Working with attachments.
Working with attachments. Letting go, working with attachments. The sessions of talk, so I will have to do my very best to truly shut up on time. Literally everybody in the world, right? We all cling to our attachments, we all cling to our desires, we all have a very important opportunity for a lot of people. So I hope that everyone will be able to attend. This is a full day, so it'll be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I will have to continue invoke the spirit of monasticism, right? So essentially having the attendees have a taste of monastic life, right? So we're living the day as a monk or a nun. It's condensed, unfortunately, within 12 hours, which is not enough time, but we do our best. Regardless, it is still a very, very beneficial and I hope inspiring opportunity for a lot of people. But anyway, and that is confirmed. I foresee a lot of new faces to this one in particular. So for my best in trying to not make it so technical, which if you know me, is very difficult to do. But I will do my best for the benefit of the attendees. Other than that, it's usually from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and it's just all meditation, right? It's 1 hour on, 1 hour off of meditation throughout the day. Hence, sign up for that as well. Our meditation classes, which would usually end around this time, we still have the mindfulness of body and feelings. So we still have the mind and mental formations, which will probably take us an hour-ish time, but the timing is not opportune enough. So we'll have to wait until July. As well, will go on until it goes on. I wanted to stick with 16 weeks or 16 classes in the spirit of the 16 Arhats. The longest part is the very beginning. So if you already knew, we spent 5 classes just speaking about definitions and all that. That took out a big chunk, I believe. So I doubt it'll take us 16 classes, but you never know. With me talking a lot and Quang assisting, and we take us and invoke the Buddha's name and share the merit. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo